any given moment, we actually would be doing justice really well. So I'll turn it back to you, Jeremy, and then we'll go forward.
Thank you, Dr. Poplin. Maybe if Carl could give us some more lights. We'll start our question part of the event this evening at the floor. We will now begin question segments. You will be welcome to come forward with your questions. Please keep your questions short and to the point, hopefully with some light. Do not offer statements, make arguments, or quote your favorite author. Once you have successfully asked your question, please return to your seat. To ensure that as many people as possible can participate, follow-up questions and rebuttals will not be possible this evening. And with that, I'll turn it back to Dr. Poplin.
Good evening, Doctor.
Hi.
Thank you so much for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
It has been excellent. I'm going to completely disregard and disrespect what you said. Sorry, dude. My name is William Maxwell Patterson, 20 years old, ordained minister from age 17, currently work.
I'm afraid, could you ask a question instead?
Yeah, sure, I'll get there. Why do you disrespect religion by mentioning it as secular as opposed to plural? Because to me, they're really interchangeable, two things. Why? Religion is innately social. So why must you describe it as secular as opposed to plural?
Okay. The term that I'm using, secularism, actually came out of Christianity, which meant a secular priest or somebody who was actually not living in a monastery but living in the world. But secular means, has come to mean a-religious, that is non-religious. So a person who says, I'm a secularist, is a person who's claiming that they are not religious. So you have secular worldviews and you have religious worldviews. And that's the way I'm using it. I'm sorry I didn't make it clear. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I just have one question. How has your experience shaped your view of the Western Christian Church?
Wow. Well, my experience is larger actually than Mother Teresa, so I'm going to kind of go off a bigger piece of experience. But I think that the Western Christian Church is, see how I say this nicely, I think it's weak. And I think it's weak because we've been very privileged. And Mother Teresa used to tell me that I think the only thing she knew about me is that I was from the United States. So every time she wanted to say something about the United States, she would shake her finger at me. And she said to me that we were spiritually the poorest of the poor. She said, you think you're very rich and you're very wealthy with money, but spiritually you're the poorest of the poor. And I think she saw that. She actually sent people to the United States. When she developed a home here, she would only send the very strongest sisters. In fact, the sister who's now in charge of Missionaries of Charity, Sister Nirmala, was a student of hers, and she was a Brahmin Hindu. She would never have to work. She was at the very top of the social class. But she was convinced and wanted to go with Mother Teresa and became Christian. And she was the person who actually opened the first home in the United States. Secondly, I think that because I think we've over-intellectualized and under-intellectualized Christianity, interestingly. I think it gets treated as a way to improve your life, which it is, but it also, as Dallas Willard points out in a new book called Knowing Christ, there is knowledge. There are actually intellectual principles in Christianity that we don't deal with in the university. So those principles just kind of sit there. And thirdly, I would say that the Western Christian Church has, largely because of what I sort of quoted from Leslie Newbegin, it has ignored the more spiritual reality of Judeo-Christian thought in an effort, I think, to conform more to the mind of the university. So things like miracles, things like that happened regularly in the New Testament, we don't bring those up. However, the Western Church is changing. I mean, the most dominant or the most growing form of the Western Church is both is a kind of mix of evangelical and what's called charismatic Christianity, which does deal more with the Holy Spirit, the spiritual transaction aspects of Christianity, and that is sort of the biggest movement, charismatic or Pentecostal around the world right now. T.D. Jakes is an African-American pastor who says that a charismatic is just a Pentecostal with many. I think you might be right. But those would be the things I think right now about the Western Church. I was very fortunate when I began to follow Christ. The Lord just sent people to me from every walk of life. So I had Baptists teaching me the Bible, and Pentecostals teaching me things, and Catholics and Protestants. The one thing is they were all pretty much what C.S. Lewis would call mere Christians. That is, they definitely believed the basic tenets of Christianity, or what Chesterton would call orthodoxy. It was a great blessing. Hi.
Hi. Mary, has this experience that you've had changed the way that you teach at Claremont?
Yes. Okay. Because I firmly believe that that you're not well educated unless you know every worldview, I include the Judeo-Christian worldview. So when I'm teaching, for example, about what are the models of education for the poor that are available, I teach the early classical tradition, which is a mix of Judeo-Christianity and Greek thought, and I talk about the Judeo-Christian principles that were behind that. And I teach all the way up to Marxism and postmodernism. I believe that as a person who teaches Ph.D. students, it's my responsibility to make sure they hear everything. So I do, and then in the summers I teach, because in the summer you can teach a class, and if it makes, they pay you. If it doesn't make, you don't get to teach it. It always makes. I teach an explicitly Christian class because many of our students are Christian and never really get the opportunity in a secular university otherwise to actually engage the ideas, the intellectual ideas within Christianity. She actually used to be at Claremont. we overlapped a few years.
Hi there.
Hi.
You spoke about forgiveness and how important it is. Even in the secular part, the last part, you said there's a form of self-forgiveness. And when you said that, you then went back and said, the self-forgiveness is not a major part of the Judeo-Christian tradition. It's forgiveness of others and accepting God's forgiveness for us. I don't know if I have how to question. I've got a lot to forgive myself for in my past. Can you expand on that it's not... It's God's forgive others and accept God's forgiveness.
Right.
But,
Okay.
like I said, I got a lot
I
to
know
forgive
that.
about myself.
No one has more than me. Okay. The way that I can do this is that I had very significant experience that I'm going to describe to you where I was taught this. And, okay. It's pretty personal, but I'm going to share it because I think it's really important. I think it was given to me because I'm supposed to share it. Okay, when I became a Christian, I had 2 abortions. And the second I became a Christian, it became pretty clear to me that that was not okay. Especially for the reason I did it is I just wanted to live my life the way I wanted to live it. And so I began to confess it over and over and over. So for several years, I was confessing this. Well, then I get to Mother Teresa's, and what does she... Now, I thought, I'll go, and I'll just say, put me where you need the most work, most help, right? Now, I thought in my mind that I would be placed with the Home for the Dying, which are adults. It never occurred to me that I might be placed with children, and certainly not with babies, right? But I was. So I get placed with babies, sick babies, and I tend them, and then I come back, and I come back and I visit my family in Texas, and then I drive back to California, and on the drive back, I stop at this monastery again. And Father Sam, one of the priests, was giving a talk, and in this talk, he was saying that they were going to. I wasn't actually in the retreat; I was just listening. But he told me I could participate. They gave us little cards just like these, and only smaller. And they said, on this card this afternoon, write on one side of the card the people you're committing to forgive, that people that you feel like you haven't forgiven. And on the back side of the card, you should write anything you still need to be forgiven for, okay? So I write my abortions at the top of my list on that side of the card, and then I write a list of people that I felt I really hadn't forgiven for things. And I'm walking along the river that runs behind this monastery in the afternoon, and I hear a voice in my spirit. Okay, this doesn't happen to me always. It's only happened to me basically twice, but mostly this one time. The other time was very small. Okay, I say it was in my spirit because if you had been walking next to me, you probably would not have heard it. Then later, when I was reading the experience of Paul, when we say he was knocked off a horse, but he wasn't, in that experience, the Bible says that the men who were with him saw the light and fell down, but they didn't hear the voice, right? Okay, so inside my spirit, I hear a man's voice, not very happy with me. And the voice said, "Who are you not to forgive someone I forgave?" So this sounds like self-forgiveness in a way, right? Okay. So I didn't know what that meant. I thought it meant that I didn't have somebody on the list. So I pull my list out and I think about it. And I'm walking along the river, and I hear exactly the same voice in the same tone, exactly the same words. And I stop again and I think about it, and I just say a little prayer, and then I walk along again. I hear exactly the same voice. At that time, I knelt down in the grass, and I looked up at the sky, and I said, "Lord, I don't know what you're talking about." And he said to me, "I forgave you the first time you asked, and I don't want you to ask me again." Okay, so the next year, I spent the entire time reading the Bible to see if I could see any instance of someone forgiving themselves. And I can't find a single one. What God was saying is, you don't even have that authority. I have the authority. I've already done it. This is getting tiresome. You're like diminishing your life with this.